I believe that when you see this title, many students may be a little confused. What handles still need to dissipate heat? Is something in your brain? But the heat dissipation here is not for the handle itself. It is similar to the heat dissipation of the mobile phone cooling back clip, stretching the handle. In fact, I didn't use a lot of stretch handles before that. But in recent years, when doing open source handheld video, many students will not mention it with children. It's not as good as a stretch handle and a mobile phone. After using the stretch handle, I found that this thing is indeed a bit fragrant. Not only simply playing simulators, but also playing with mobile phones with controllers is a lot of high-quality products. A single machine is indeed more comfortable than rubbing glass. But recently there has been a stretch handle called a cooling grip. So today I found the small machine family, X3 Note Lite and LitJoy's M1i of the Storm. Both are available for Android and Apple platforms. It is also the only stretch handle on the market that supports heat dissipation on Android and iOS. Let's take a look at the so-called cooling grips today. Is it a gimmick, or is there really something? In fact, students who have used stretch handles, for the appearance of the small machine Northern Lights, it should be very familiar with the medium. The moment stretch handle shape ABXY buttons all use Kaihua micro movement. The most important thing is that this ABXY can also be based on. Players' needs are cut down and rearranged. So the question is, why doesn't the small machine put this function on its own regular handle? For PCNS dual platform players, it's a very good feature. The most important thing is, in addition to the action button X3, it actually has a joystick and a cross key. It is also possible to change according to different games. I didn't expect that even a stretch handle was made such a high self-reliance instrument these days. The overall weight of the cake is 290 grams. Add a mobile phone of about 200 grams, and it is 500 grams. This weight has surpassed NS. In contrast, the LitJoy family's Eye of the Storm looks much lighter. This handle has a modular design. The cooling back clip can be separated from the mobile phone itself. MHO, isn't this a stretch handle plus a cooling quilt? But I personally like this design plan more. After all, many games that are not very stressful, we can simply remove this heat dissipation double to reduce weight. Although Stormflame does not have the powerful customization features of the Northern Lights. But there is no ambiguity in terms of materials. The configuration of the Hall Banji plus Hall joystick is not available in the Northern Lights, because we mainly look at the heat dissipation performance of the cooling handle today. So I won't go into too much detail about the function of the handle itself. Let's get straight to the point. At this stage, many manufacturers are promoting heat dissipation. They all like to emphasize the awesome configuration of squeezing heat pipes and squeezing fans. But no matter how luxurious the stacking is, it is ultimately used to serve the experience. So it is most intuitive for us to look directly at the data. Let's talk about this test platform, OPPO Phone N2 Flip for the boss of the Android terminal. On the iOS side, we were lucky enough to get an F1X. This makes it easier to see the heat dissipation effect. First, let's open the most popular at this stage. Android test software Genshin Impact to see the effect. But after all, it's the iPhone X. If you open 60 frames to test Genshin Impact, there will be stuttering or even freezing. So we are running at 30 frames on iOS. First of all, without a cooling back clip, playing Genshin Impact for 30 minutes can be seen. 30 frames is not very much pressure for Apple. But the temperature quickly dried up to 43 degrees. When we add the cooling back clip, the situation changes a lot. About 10 minutes, the temperature reached 36 degrees. The follow-up has been stable, plus back clips. Afterwards, except the temperature dropped by 7 degrees. We can see that the overall frame rate is also much more stable. Maybe for Genshin Impact with 30 frames, the difference is not very obvious. So here I also tested a mobile game Pascal contract that can open 60 frames. First of all, without the heat dissipation currency price, 60 frames can only be stable for 1.5 minutes. The frame rate curve at the back directly becomes a new image. Especially after 16 minutes, it is difficult for the game to reach 60 frames of the game day. The final temperature was also maintained at about 42 degrees. The next step is to add the Eye of the Storm, which can be stable throughout the process. 60 frames of the game. And the temperature is also very stable. It reaches 38 degrees. Based on the performance of the above two games, it can be seen that cooling grips don't just improve the gaming experience by temperature. It also plays a very important role in maintaining the frame rate and stability. Next, let's take a look at the performance of the Northern Lights of the small machine. First of all, Genshin Impact. Because the mobile phone we use can run up to 60 frames. So we directly turn on the 60 frame test. First of all, it is still in the bare metal state. Although we turned on 60 frames. But the game didn't run at 60 frames throughout the game. From the first second to the final end, the game always fluctuates around 45 frames. The final temperature reached about 47 degrees, and after adding the heat dissipation wall clip, the 60-frame experience only lasted about a minute. Although in about 2 minutes I still struggle to get 60 stitches, but the follow-up performance is not much different from not wearing a back clip. It seems that the heat dissipation of the folding screen is still almost meaningful. But what is surprising is that the final temperature was only 37 degrees, without back clip, lowered by a full 10 degrees. Next is Pascal, who also runs and starts 60 frames to make an appointment. Without a heat dissipation wall clip most of the game, the frame rate fluctuates between 60 and 45 frames. 18 minutes later, it's hard to have a stable 60-frame experience. The final temperature also came to about 42 degrees. In addition, after the heat dissipation is clamped, you can see the fluctuations. Not only has it become less, but the fluctuation has also decreased significantly. It can basically be maintained between 60 and 52 frames. Sometimes there can be wrinkles. 60 frames of experience. The final maximum temperature was only 37 degrees. Can also be seen from the performance of the above two games on Android. The cooling grip plays a big role in stabilizing the frame rate and cooling down. Through today's test, we can see the cooling grip in the emerging stage. The improvement in the gaming experience is still very obvious. But it is undeniable that, at this stage, there is still a problem that affects the experience. That is almost 500 grams of weight after adding the phone. But at the same time, during the test it was found that the stretch handle was playing. When playing some large-scale standalone games on mobile phones, the experience was really good, especially some Steam ports. During the game, in terms of handling, it is much better than rubbing glass. After all, after the game controlled by the native controller is forcibly adapted to the mobile phone, the advantage of physical buttons is that it is really difficult to imitate rubbing glass. For those who often use mobile games, for students who touch your device on large mobile phones, the cooling grip can really be considered.